Is it that time again? Is it Thursday? Did we all have a good week? Yeah. I love Thursdays. I think Thursdays is one of my favorite days of the week. When I went to Northern, it was like a big Thursday was like the big party night. I think because a lot of people went home. But still to this day, it's like Thursday is always a fun day to me. Yeah, thanks for everyone coming in on YouTube and checking us out on LinkedIn. I'm here with my friend Kevin. We're going to let some people get on before we officially start. I don't even know what an official start is. Yeah. It's when I do that radio welcome and launch the show. So what's up, Adam? Good to see you, my friend. I'm going to throw a little music on in the background. All right, guys, tell me if the music's too loud. We don't have headphones on today. You know, we do things raw here, and I don't have this huge studio set up, but at the same time, we're bringing the love, we're bringing the joy, and we're enjoying the day. Hey, Katina, good to see you. Thanks for coming on. Dr. Hector, it was good to see you this week. And there is Nate Rubin. Good morning, Dave and Kevin. TJ and I are watching from South Carolina. How cool is that?
Wow. Yeah. You got them from everywhere.
Thanks, Nate. Good to see you guys. Enjoy your trip out there. And hey, Laura, how are you today? Good to see you. Yeah, lots of peeps. We got people coming in on, more people coming on YouTube, which is super cool too. And
I guess Nate and I know each other.
Oh, the Jewish Youth Group days.
It's a small world.
So you know Nate?
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. Sorry, Nate.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, it is a small world.
It is a very small world. This happens all the time.
Yeah. It's funny because someone was just talking about that too. I was having sushi with Sean.
Yeah.
At a place called Kaido in Arlington Heights, which Nate introduced us to. If anybody wants to get sushi, go to Kaido. And the cool thing about that was we were talking about a local electrician, and then I got an email from him, and it's like, it's funny how so many of us don't know that we know so many of us.
Yeah.
And what did it used to be, like 6 degrees of separation?
It's got to be like 3 or 4 now. It's way too small of a world to be 6 degrees of separation.
It's got to be like 3 or 4. That's so funny. Yeah, I think it's totally changed now. It's a whole different world. Yeah, but it's super fun, and yeah, we love seeing everybody on here. And oh, the summer weeks! It's finally summer. You've lived here all your life, right?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you born?
I grew up in Buffalo Grove.
Oh, you did grow up in Buffalo.
So nearby, yeah. I grew up in Buffalo Grove. So yeah, I'm very used to Chicago weather and how crazy it can be.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I was just in California with people all over the country and explaining to some of them how so often it's like once this time of year hits, everything's in high gear. Everyone just wants to be outside. Everyone's in like a totally different mode because we've been cold for 6 months.
Yeah.
Or 8 months.
Yeah. I always tell people, if you don't like the weather in Chicago, just wait 10 minutes.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. So we're long in the summer this week, and it's been cool. I've actually a little bit fried. I was at a golf outing yesterday, and the day before I was in the sun too. So it was like, it kind of feels good to actually sit inside for a little while. It's good stuff. All right. Well, we are going to kick off here now. We always like kicking off with a quote, which is good. And I usually throw that on the guest to do that. So of course, this time I did the same thing. So let me turn down the music here. And yeah, we'll start off. So, all right, Kev, you want to start us off with our quote?
Yeah, absolutely. So the quote that I picked for today, the quote is, "People are not perfect. We are all imperfect and flawed in one way or another. We all struggle, but with hard work, humility, and dedication, imperfect people can still have perfect moments." That quote was from a woman named Brandy Halliday, she is the widow of former Major League Baseball pitcher Roy Halladay, who pitched for the Toronto Blue Jays and Philadelphia Phillies for a little over a decade. Tragically, he passed away in a plane crash a few years ago. So this quote is actually from her Hall of Fame speech for him. And while it doesn't necessarily, talk about disability per se, I do think it really applies well to that area. When you have a disability, like you kind of view yourself as a little bit flawed, but that doesn't mean that you can't, have a good and fulfilling life still, and be able to, to impact others and try to change things as well.
Love that. Thank you, Kev. And on that note, welcome to this episode of Live Beyond Default Livestream. It's your weekly dose of personal growth. My name is Dave. We're on episode number 52, and this is my friend Kevin Sullivan, and we are super excited to be here. Thank you for joining us. We know you're going to love the conversation, the collaboration, the leadership takeaways, and just being a part of the Live Beyond Default Livestream community. And as I always ask, has your week been epic so far? And if not, why not? Are we taking responsibility for our thoughts, our words, our actions, or are we blaming things on the president or Bitcoin or our boss or our significant other? So we know that everything and happiness comes from within, and we want to take full responsibility for what we are all doing and how we're feeling in our lives. Hey, everybody's doing the best that they can with what they have at this time, always. And I know we are doing the same too. So yeah, let's level up our game and have a great rest of the week so we could bring that into the weekend and share it with our coworkers, our family, and our friends. And we want to leave the vibe better than we found it. So we always like to start off with a few things that we're grateful for. And gratitude is the key to happiness,
Of course,
right? There's always something that we can look at that, we don't like, and there's always something that we can look at that we can complain about and start taking that victim villain mentality, right? Oh, life's happened. Why is this shit happening to me? And pointing our fingers. But we don't do that here at Live Beyond Default. So if anybody has 3 shares or 1 share about what you're grateful for, now's the time to throw it in the chat. Let's start off with a little bit of gratitude. Kev? Let's talk about gratitude.
Gratitude.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm obviously grateful for being here today with you on this live stream with everyone that's tuning in. Honestly, I'm very grateful for the fact that I get to do this and share my experiences, and the fact that I get to, live a life that is inclusive with my peers and get to work a full-time job and, get to live my own life, because I know that there are times throughout history where maybe that would not have been possible due to my physical disability. I wake up every day grateful for that, for sure.
I love that share. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, what a vibe. I never met Kevin before, and he just came into the place. I heard him open the door and I walked out, and it's just such a blessing. My Sean, our friend Sean introduced us months and months ago. So this is long overdue. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. And, something I'm grateful for is really the way that people have been showing up in my life. And when I say people, I mean friends, I mean family, I mean clients, new people that I've met like you and a couple others over the last week. Have really shown up for me and encouraged me to become better, and called me out when I'm playing small and calling me out on my bullshit at times. And at the same time, they've really held space for me when I've needed that space held, and I needed a little bit of compassion and self-love and just being held there. So I am super grateful for all those that have really been there for me. It's been an amazing few weeks, and loving summer and doing my best to stay focused.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for everybody being on here. I wanted to say thanks to Dawn for coming on. Pete and Michelle says rocking the beard. Yeah. Elena's on there. So Nate says this morning's gratitude list: waking up sober, a beautiful lakefront porch to meditate on, and living with an incredible life partner, Tiaja. That's awesome, Nate. Thanks for sharing that. Looks like Sean's on. I am watching. Glad you guys connected. And Laura says, I am grateful for the opportunity and those that open the door to it. Yeah. Isn't that funny? Like, how often, Kevin, is there like doors of opportunity opening for us, but we just don't even realize it?
Yeah.
Like, it's right in front of us so often, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I've learned that, I say yes to pretty much everything as long as it seems like a decent opportunity. And that's gone pretty well for me so far, and gotten me to where I am today. So I really think, if you just say yes to more things, it'll benefit you in the long run.
Now that's an interesting frame, because we talk about a lot on here, like saying no to things, right? We talk about like really not protecting our time, but we talk about it more as like being energy sovereign, and taking away some of these things that are distractions. But I like how you reframe that, like how you said yes to so many things, and what that's actually done for you in your life.
Yeah. And of course, there's a limit. I mean, you can't say yes to like every single thing.
Right.
Obviously, everyone has their own personal bandwidth. But I mean, just a few years ago when I started getting into motivational speaking, some friends of mine who were teachers asked me if I would come speak to their classes. And I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And then it just slowly kind of built from there. And now, I'm going into different schools, businesses, organizations, sharing my experiences, and, getting to be here with you today doing this live stream. So, I mean, it's the opportunities that have opened up because of that have been really great. So that's why I say, it doesn't hurt to say yes, but I understand what you're saying too. You don't want to say yes to too many things and spread yourself too thin either.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like the opportunities that you talked about, or you mentioned a little bit about motivational speaking, which is, I think, the reason why Sean connected us as speakers. I'm going to change something on the equipment here, but what I wanted to ask you was, how did you get into speaking from the beginning? And then we'll start getting into your story more, talk about ableism, how you got to be where you are today. But I want to hear a little bit more about the motivational speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into the speaking really back in college. Every so often a friend would ask me to come speak to their group or their class or what have you. And I was happy to do it. So that kind of laid the groundwork. And then once I graduated college, I actually did an internship for a radio show that was based out of Los Angeles. The host of that show is legally blind. So she also has a disability. And in addition to her radio show, she also does motivational speaking. So in this internship, I was a producer and also her assistant, more or less. I would help her with answering emails and, whatever else she needed. And that was my real first exposure to doing something along those lines. And then the real impetus was honestly COVID. When everything shut down and there was nothing to do, and I was like, well, I guess it's a good time for some introspection since there's not much else to do. And with everything that was going on with like the protests and all that at that point, I was like, wow, I really like this energy that I'm seeing from people for what's going on here at this time. But I'd love to see that same energy for people with disabilities as well, and trying to correct things that are still plaguing us to this day, such as air travel or trying to find accessible housing or employment or things of that nature.
So you said something about the impetus and starting on your journey, and you got this gig that was based out of LA.
Yeah.
You said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did they find you?
That was honestly through a friend. It was posted on Illinois State's like job boards website. I'm a Redbird. I went to Illinois State for school.
Yeah.
It was posted on their job board, and like a month before graduation, a friend of mine reaches out to me. He sends me this link. He's like, hey, this sounds like a perfect fit for you. You should totally apply for this. So I applied for it. I had the interview, and it's funny because I didn't hear anything for a couple weeks after that. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I got it. I don't know what I'm going to do once I graduate. And then graduation day, I'm like getting out of the car, and like 10 minutes before I'm about to graduate from college, I got the phone call that I got this internship.
Wow.
So sometimes it just works out well. And it's just really good timing.
Yeah. And think of how that like was such a catalyst in so many other things that happen in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then something else that struck me on what you said was you mentioned a little bit about COVID.
Yeah.
And how that was a shift, or that was a reflection, or you saw things going on.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that, because COVID was a massive shift for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to dig a little more deep in that, because I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, so COVID was a big challenge for me. I had just gone through like a major life change before that, my living situation. So it was a big adjustment, honestly. And then, you know, it's like, okay, I'm trying to get used to like this new experience, and then the world shuts down. So it's like all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, I'm stuck at home. I can't go anywhere. You know, and then everything happened with George Floyd and the protests and all that.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of those protests in Palatine. So
yes,
I attended both of them, actually. And that's just really what kind of got the brain going. And I was like, wow, this is great energy. This is really trying to make a difference. You know, but what can we do to try to direct this energy also towards ableism, and try to, you know, improve that as well.
Yeah. Directing that energy towards ableism, right? Like transmuting what was going on, taking that wave that was going through the world, right? That energetic shift during COVID, and now applying it into something and bringing it to something that's going to be powerful and going to be good for people. Yeah. That's super. I really relate to that, just in the sense in how I shifted my career. I shifted people who I was around. I shifted my mindset, and I figured, you know, why not? It's perfect time to quit your job in October 2020 in the middle of COVID. Like everything else is in flux. May as well just ride that wave. And that's what I did. So I really appreciate you saying that. So that's a great segue into ableism, and which is what our topic is today. But of course, we talk about a lot of things. So talk to me more about that. Like maybe give a definition. I know that's so, what's the definition of so-and-so?
Yeah.
That's like so cheesy radio, right? At the same time, though, a lot of us, you know, here I'm looking up different definitions, and I know what it feels like to me, but it's not about me. It's about other people. So what do you talk to us about ableism, and perhaps a little bit about COVID and what the shifts could be, but really like your baseline level and what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. I'm glad we're having this discussion, because honestly, had never even heard of the word ableism before I started all this.
Yeah. Because I didn't until you brought it up.
Yeah.
Like I literally had to look it up. He's like, ableism. I'm like, that's a great topic.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what it was.
Fair. Yeah. I mean, I didn't really know what it was either until a few years ago. So the way I define ableism is, I would say it's, you know, discriminating against someone solely based on their ability level. And that could be a lot of things. That can be their physical ability. That could be their cognitive ability. That could be their emotional ability, like whatever that may be. And it takes a lot of different forms. Like there's the very obvious forms of like being called a word that I'm definitely not going to say here. You know, but like that's obviously like the biggest one. There are systemic ableism issues, such as lack of accessible housing, or not being able to bring your wheelchair into the cabin of a plane, or, you know, finding or getting like an equal education. You know, so these things are still issues. I will say they have gotten a lot better. Largely because of really two acts of legislation: the Rehabilitation Act of 1974, which established Section 504, which means that any program receiving federal assistance cannot discriminate based on disability. And then later on, there was the ADA, which is the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, which was arguably the most comprehensive piece of legislation that we have on record so far. And that established equal access to, businesses, to everyday places, to train stations, to offices like this one, to making sure that sidewalks were more accessible by putting curb cuts in. Things that people don't really think about on a day-to-day basis. But if these things aren't there, then they affect what I can do.
Yeah.
Even today, you look at public transportation here in Chicago, only 74% of the L is accessible. And it's over 30 years since the ADA was passed.
Now, can't that be, I don't want to say forced, I don't want to say mandated, when it gets to the point where somebody's not following something that is a law,
mm-hmm.
and the law is obviously clearly for good purposes. It's not like a controversial law, okay? Like, how is there still 26% not accessible where you can't get on a train?
I agree. So luckily there does seem to be some relief coming in terms of the infrastructure bill that passed a couple years ago.
Okay.
But it's still going to take like another 20 to 30 years for it to be 100% accessible. Yeah.
20 to 30 years.
Yeah. It's pretty ridiculous.
I don't have any hair left. What is that?
By the time they finish it, I may not have any hair.
Yeah. See?
Yeah.
Oh my.
So, I mean, honestly, it's being active about it. It's being, proactive by reaching out to your legislators and saying that this is a problem, that this needs to be taken care of.
Yeah.
I find it amazing that it's even worse in other cities. Like in New York City, only a quarter of the stations are accessible. Yeah.
That's crazy.
One in four in one of the largest cities in the world.
In the world.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And is it that, I don't want to say hard because we know it's the right thing to do. We have technology. Like, how hard is it? This is not the 1930s. Like, how hard is it to actually make something wider,
right?
Put an extra step, have an extra beep,
right?
Whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
and while I'm taking this from an accessibility perspective for someone with a disability, this affects everyone. I mean, I remember a few years ago seeing an article about a woman in New York who was tragically killed because she was trying to carry her baby and the stroller down the stairs because the station didn't have an elevator, and she tripped and fell, and she later died from her injuries. And it's like, how are we okay with that? I don't get it.
Oh, it doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these things came up. You said things came up during COVID for you.
Yeah.
And you recognized more of these limitations.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that there's a world that's shifting and so much energy is happening, and we want to put it towards good things. Like, what is something that we can do, all of us can do, just to be more aware and maybe say something to somebody to help facilitate a change?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think it's always being on the lookout. The example I can use here is about a month ago, went out to dinner with a friend of mine.
Okay.
We went to Potbelly.
Yeah.
Over in Kildare here. And the store was accessible, all that. But as we were walking in, I noticed that there was a curb cut missing that should have been there. Because when it was originally built, there was no building right next door, but now there is.
Okay.
So in order to get to that building, you would need a curb cut where there wasn't one. And I was like, wow, that's not right. We should probably do something about this. And honestly, it is simpler to get something changed than people realize. I did
to get something changed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So tell us.
So all I did was Google the name of the shopping center.
Okay.
And when I did that, a website popped up that showed the information, the contact info for the leasing agent.
Okay.
And I emailed the leasing agent. I was like, hey, here's the deal. This is what's going on. And then I just ended it with like, PS, if you're not the correct person, please forward it to whoever can handle this.
Yeah.
And then like a week later, I got an email saying that they were going to fix it. And I can confirm that it has been fixed.
Okay.
And a curb cut has been installed there. So really, it's just taking the initiative. But I think people hear that and they sometimes get daunted by it. Or they just don't know who to ask or where to go.
So not knowing who to ask or where to go,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds to me like that's a lot like life.
Yeah.
When you really think about it, right? So how many times in life do we not know who to ask or where to go when a challenge or something happens? And the point is, just take that first step.
Yeah.
And maybe we do all think that if something is a challenge, like you said, there wasn't a curb cut.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it really that big of a deal? You did some Googling, you sent an email, right?
Yep.
I mean, how hard is it to send an email?
It took me 5 minutes.
It took me 5
It
minutes.
was pretty easy, yeah.
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what happens when you actually ask for something.
Right.
Wow.
And they were very appreciative of it too. In the response, he was like, "Oh, thank you so much for pointing this out to us. We're gonna get a contractor on it right away." So a lot of the time, it's just oversight. Like,
Yeah.
Because these things, I use a power wheelchair occasionally.
Okay.
So like,
What's a power wheelchair? Oh, you mean you don't have to?
yeah, it's
Got it.
Yeah, it's got a motor and everything.
Got it.
And obviously, a lack of a curb cut is something that affects me, but it doesn't affect someone who's able-bodied and who's bipedal, walks on their own 2 legs.
Yeah.
So like, I'm sure hundreds of people have seen where that curb cut was missing, and none of them noticed it. And then I went there and I noticed it, so I did something about it.
Yeah.
The key is really getting able-bodied people to also notice these things, because it does take some buy-in. Like I saw it with the George Floyd protests. It was once everybody got involved.
Right.
People of other races started, protesting in the streets. That's when we started to see some change.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing applies to ableism as well.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And something I wondered too. Now, the response was they were grateful.
Yeah.
That you said that.
Yeah.
Now, at the other time, I wondered. There's a little bit of me that wonders, like, if how often people will come at them, anybody, us. Sometimes we do that too. That we come at people from more of like an offensive point of view.
Yeah.
And because of the way that you asked and that you said it, perhaps they were used to people coming at them like, hey, why the F don't you have this curb cut in there?
Right.
It's against the and if you don't take care of this stuff right now, you know what's going to happen? Boom.
You're going to get sued.
You're going to get sued. So, there might have been a little bit inside them that they were just happy that you were cool about it.
Yeah. And I put in the email, like, I explained, like, I have a physical disability. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. So like, I gave some background. I'm not like just some random guy off the street who's like, oh, you're missing this.
Yeah. And that's something that we can all learn, right? Like, the way that we present things to people, the way that we see things to people, the way that we frame things. So often, like, we think that what's going on in our head is what's really happening. And I like to say that our brain is a movie projector, and we're transmitting our thoughts, our feelings, our experiences onto the world, which is the screen. And that's what we really think is going on. And in a way, you are making your own reality. At the same time, what we're really thinking is going on, it's not really what's happening. Everybody has a life. Everybody's up in their own head. Everybody's doing their own thing. You don't know where anybody's coming from, and what their previous experiences have been in life. And showing up with kindness really makes a big difference. Kevin's like, right. I mean,
it goes a long way. I mean, it helps.
How else are we supposed to do it, right? It's like showing up with kindness is so important. So, and I wanted to say thank you, everybody, for showing up with kindness here, and we're grateful that you're here. If you just joined us, This is Live Beyond Default Livestream. It's episode number 52. We're here with Kevin Sullivan, my friend, and we're talking about ableism. We were talking about some accessibility challenges, whether it be in the Metra or the I said Metra. You know, I'm not calling out anybody.
No, but it is. It's okay.
Okay, whether in the Chicago transportation system or New York transportation system, right? And then we brought up something on the sidewalk at a Potbelly. All right, I'll keep dropping names either way. But we appreciate you being here. And of course, if you're watching the replay, share it with your friends, share with your family and your coworkers. Talking about a lot of cool things today, and we appreciate you being here. So tell us, Kevin. Oh, I want to share here. Amira says, yes, accessibility is also important for parents, childcare providers, and strollers. We are so much more aware of the issues that wheelchair users have now.
Yeah, I believe that. And I do believe that because Mia is my sister-in-law.
Yeah.
So with my little buddy, Maddox, yeah, I mean, accessibility applies to everyone. I mean, if a curb cut isn't there at the crosswalk, it affects a wheelchair, it affects a stroller, a walker, crutches, like it doesn't matter. It's ubiquitous to everybody.
It's ubiquitous to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny how something so small that you don't think even matters really affects so many people.
Yeah.
And I really like the fact that you said, Kevin, it's like the awareness, right? It's having everybody be aware of really what's going on in our surroundings.
Yeah.
What's happening around us. Maybe it helps if some of us, all of us, including me, take our heads out of our phones and stop derping.
Well, it's okay. I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah, I said we, I said
Okay.
us, and stop like derping like this, right?
Yeah.
There's actually like stuff going on right in front of us that we're not seeing.
I will say the most common comment I get from people is, wow, I didn't notice how inaccessible this was until I got to know you or I started hanging out with you or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's like once you're open to it, it's like, oh, wow, I really realize how inaccessible things are and how, this door button should be in a different place or this curb cut shouldn't be blocked. For example, actually, Palatine has a farmer's market every Saturday.
Every Saturday.
Every Saturday. And they have a little area with a bunch of picnic tables. 2 of those picnic tables are wheelchair accessible, which is great. And there's a curb cut leading to them, but the curb cut is in a parking spot. So the first time I went to go try to sit at one of those tables, there was a car blocking it. And I was like, this doesn't seem right. So I took a picture of it and I sent it to the mayor of Palatine and the director of public works, who they know me well at this point.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, they know me well, and they're gonna keep hearing from me if I have to. And they were like, yeah, this is a problem. And now that parking spot is striped off. So,
it's striped off.
Yeah.
Now,
so no one can park there.
How long did that take?
It took 2 weeks. So not that bad.
That's
honestly.
pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say 2 months.
No, honestly, I thought that's what I was thinking. I thought it would be like, okay, end of summer, they're finally going to do it when the farmer's market's over.
I am so happy about that. I'm like, oh God, how long did this take?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
There's not always a big sense of urgency with these things, but no, luckily they got it done in 2 weeks. So.
Of course, there's not a big sense of urgency because people aren't thinking about it. They got legs.
Yeah.
We got legs. We're not thinking about it at times, but bringing this awareness, and I appreciate you sharing that because that's really big, and I'm going to be more aware of it now too. And again, we're talking about a micro, which also applies to the macro, and the macro is bringing more awareness to how so many little things affect what we're doing. Yeah, we talked about that here. There was a compliance of there's a hallway right behind us. And there was a compliance for how wide it had to be. Yeah. So people could get through with their wheelchairs. Right. I don't remember what the exact number was. Yeah. Whatever, it was 30 something inches. Whatever it was, I remember Radka saying, oh, yeah, this is what the compliance is, but it's still not enough. We're going to make it wider. Yeah. Don't worry about the rest of the place. It's all going to work out. Right. And we weren't worried about it, but maybe that's some of the reaction that she's gotten before from people. So at that point, she said, yeah, no, we're going to make it this wide. And I think she made it like 4 or 5 inches wider. She's like,
Yeah.
this is what it wants to be. And on top of it, you're going to want a wider hall to walk through anyway. So we're going to make it wider. I was like, wow, that's amazing.
And honestly, you bring up a great point that I think a lot of people don't realize. The ADA, the requirements that are laid out are the bare minimum. Like they are the bare minimum that you can do to be compliant.
Of course.
But like that doesn't include like buttons that open doors automatically. Those aren't required by law in the ADA. Things like that. Or for instance, my old office that I used to work in Chicago and River North, towards the end of my time when I would go to an office, we actually did an accessibility audit of the building. And we identified there was a door that they had just installed. It was like this really nice, like frosted glass door that they just put in.
Yeah.
And they were like, yeah, we need to widen this. It's the minimum, but like, it was so narrow. I had to go through it like so carefully.
Wow.
So that was one of the things. And like, I actually got them to install a device on the door opener button that connects to an app on my phone. So when I get close to the door, it opens automatically. So I think it's funny now because I don't work in that building anymore. And that's the only building that has them. So
yeah,
those are the only 3 doors in the entire city of Chicago that I could open from my phone as of now.
Think of the ripple effect though.
Yeah.
That it's having on other people.
Yeah.
Right. That's like trailblazing an idea that other people don't have, which is we love doing here. Right. Mm-hmm. And having that idea and being able to share that with other people so they could get the benefit out of it too.
Right. And it was to make my life easier, but it was to make everyone's life easier. Like, for instance,
make your life easier.
Yeah.
You got enough to deal with.
Right. And
it's like,
and like, for instance, the biggest problem I always had was finding a disabled stall that was open. In my office,
a disabled stall that was
like
open.
Like a
what
bathroom,
does that mean? So other people are using the stall?
Yeah, like other people were using the disabled bathroom stall.
Okay.
And I would have to do like laps around the office, like looking for an open stall. So part of this accessibility audit was that I had them put like the logo, like the handicap logo that you see on like a parking sign, on the bathroom stall doors. I was like, maybe that'll get people to think twice about it. I have no idea if it worked or not because I don't work there anymore. But
interesting.
Yeah,
you said the word handicapped. Is that okay to say?
Yeah, I go back and forth on that one.
We're hitting a spot here because I was wondering about it too. Like,
it's a gray area because there are plenty of parking signs that say handicap parking still.
Yeah.
I see it all the time. But I do think the word handicapped is a little dated.
A little dated.
Okay. People are always like, how should I refer to you? And I'm like, you can just say I'm disabled. It's fine. But people often view disabled as like a bad word or it's like, oh, I can't say that,
Well, it says dis in the front of it. So it's kind of, it's bringing like can't.
Right. Maybe there's that that like slightly negative connotation to it. But like, I mean, being disabled is an identity. It really is. Like whether you like it or not, I mean, it is part of my identity. And I didn't always, understand that or really care to admit that when I was younger. But obviously it's something I've grown into and accepted as I've gotten older.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And so it makes me think like how many times it's what you say, it's how you say it, not what you say.
Yep.
And now we're getting into that, like, well, where are these people coming from? Whatever these people are, whoever's saying the word, like, where are they coming from? Right? Somebody might still use the word Oriental. You drive by a store, it says Oriental rugs, right? Well, do they have to change their sign? Oriental, that's a bad word, right? It's a terrible word. We can't say that anymore. Sometimes people are saying a word like disabled or handicapped,
right?
And
or
they
worse,
could, or worse.
Or
they
worse.
could be the greatest people in the world, and there's no like, there's no negativity or bad feelings connected to it, right? It could just be we don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
Like we haven't been told what to say. So the word handicap, the word disabled, I don't know. And I'm just glad you brought it up because I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Like I want to know about this because I want to learn, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what to, I call you Kevin.
Yeah.
I don't
Most
know
people do.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't, it's sometimes it's like, I don't know and I don't want to know. And what I mean by I don't want to know is I don't want to get caught up
Right.
in the hype of what am I identifying as? What am I this? Hey, you'll tell me if you want me to call you something. If not, I'm going to call you Kevin.
Yeah. That works.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
Like,
of course. And that is a large reason why I do the motivational speaking too. Because I mean, education is the best tool. And I remember when I was going through school, we had a lot of guest speakers. I definitely don't remember any that looked like me or dealt with the things that I was dealing with. So really, you know, I love going into schools. For instance, I had a speech last year. It was to a group of 8th graders. And at the end of the speech, I found out that one of the kids who also had a disability said to one of the teachers, wow, I really thought he was talking about my life. Just the things I was saying. So it's like, okay, then that's what makes it worth it. That makes a difference. Knowing that, you know, it maybe made his day a little bit easier. Maybe it made his classmates a little bit more understanding of what he's going through.
Sure.
And hopefully it made his transition to high school a little bit easier.
I love that. Yeah, I love that a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you something here. I just want to share. Somebody had a good share here.
Yeah.
Juliana said, this was awesome, positive, and thought-provoking. Way to kick off the day. Appreciate you two spreading the message. Go, Kevin. Juliana, thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Julie.
Really appreciate that. And Dawn, you're right. If you don't really realize that you take so many things for granted until it happens to you and you're dealing with trying to do the work around to get through the day.
Yep.
Yeah, Dawn. Dawn is a fellow collaborator, realtor of mine. So
cool.
She works at a different agency. And of course, we collaborate on deals. So thank you, Dawn. Thanks for educating us on that, Kevin. I often get confused. They call it handicap parking. Always seemed like a gray area to me as well. Yeah. And funny thing is, when you look at that, you talked about the logo.
Yeah.
And something that I've noticed about the handicapped logo is it's more leaning forward now.
Yes.
Did you notice that?
Yes.
You did notice it, right?
Yes. So there was a redesign of it, I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And you don't see it everywhere.
No.
Really in like newer places you see it. But yeah, so the logo that everyone's probably used to is the one where it's just like a person sitting straight up and like,
straight up. And then there's the wheel on the bottom and it's literally straight up.
Right.
Like a 90-degree angle.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. But the newer one has the person leaning more forward in the chair and they look like they're propelling themselves with the wheels.
That's it. Propelling. Yeah. I wanted to say racing, but that wasn't the right term. Yeah, propelling.
Yeah. Good. So I think the idea was to, you know, make it more obvious that like not everyone who has a disability is in a wheelchair, and not everyone who is in a wheelchair is always in that wheelchair. Like, yes, I use a power wheelchair. I did not bring my wheelchair here today.
Yeah.
As you know, I walked into your office.
You did. Yeah. And that was kind of interesting too. Like I heard the door open because I was sitting here in the studio and I heard the door open. I'm like, oh, Kevin's here. So I walk out. I've never met him in person before. And I'm like, oh, he's walking in.
Yeah. Cool.
I thought you were going to be wheeling in. Yeah. I had no idea. I'm like, oh, he's walking.
I get that reaction a lot. It's always fun.
Did I have a look on my face?
No, you didn't.
Okay.
No, you didn't. Like, but it's always fun to see people's reaction when they're like, oh, I didn't know you could do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's walking pretty good. I'm like, cool. And, you know, I think I was up in my head a little bit too, right? Like, I'm only human.
Yeah.
I'm going to say things. I'm going to feel certain ways, right? I got things going on in my life. Not that they're more of a struggle or more important than anybody else's. But I remember thinking about it this morning too for a few minutes, like getting out of my head, like, hey, like, I want Kevin to feel comfortable. And then it's like, well, hey, am I like trying to make him feel comfortable now because he has a disability, or am I just wanting to make him feel comfortable because I want people to feel comfortable? And I'm like, dude, get out of your head. This is why I don't watch news, right? This is why I don't have TV in my house, okay? This is why I'm very selective on who I surround myself with. Thank you for being a friend again.
Of course.
And a new friend. And this is why I'm super important. It's it's all about what you're exposing yourself to. And that's what you have a choice about. And we talk about that a lot on this show. Like, what are we letting into our minds, our ears, our eyes? Who are we surrounding ourselves with? So when I saw myself getting up in my head this morning, it was like, yeah, that was a societal thing. That was a people wanting me to think a certain way thing. And it's like, no, dude, you're fine. He's fine. Dry off and get going. Right? I usually get these thoughts in the shower.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
For sure.
Or doing the dishes. When you're doing something mundane, like all of a sudden these thoughts come in.
It's where you do your best thinking. I get it.
Like, oh,
but I think you bring up a great point, and it's a takeaway that I always put in my speeches. You know, people, generally speaking, I think want to help. But I think it's important for people to realize that, like, there is a such thing as over helping. You know, there are definitely times where it's like people want to help me and it's like, okay, I can do this. I don't need your help, you know, and they'll just like do it anyway. It's like, okay, whatever. It's not a big deal, but you know, I think a lot of people, you know, see someone with a disability. It's like, oh, they need my help. It's like, pump your brakes. They might need your help. Ask first. And if they don't need your help, that's okay. Like, it just means that they're comfortable. They can do it. And you just move on with your day and don't get offended by it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Tweet that social media, Sarah. I like that one a lot. That is a really, really good one. They might need your help.
Might.
Yeah. Pump the brakes.
Yeah.
That is a huge takeaway. If there's anything to take away, there's a lot of takeaways. There's a lot of gold nuggets. That right there, I think I know you shifted the mindset for a lot of our listeners. And just throwing it out to the universe, you shifted the mindset on that. So thank you.
Thank you.
That was a really big one.
Yeah.
Nate said something interesting here. I believe it's still acceptable to refer to the Orient as a location and Oriental as a description of things, but not people. Okay, so the Orient is a location, Oriental rug, Oriental thing, but not Oriental people. And then he brought up something from Wikipedia here, which is cool. Thank you, Nate, for sharing that. So some things are outdated, some things are traditional. What isn't outdated is that we're all human, and we're on Team Human. And Kevin, I don't remember exactly what he said, but when I talked with him on the phone the first time, and we had our Google Meet, he said that he was born with a disability. He was born with something. And why don't we share a little bit about that if you're okay?
Yeah, of course.
Cool.
Yeah. So I was born with a congenital disability known as arthrogryposis multiplex congenita, AMC for short, not the theater, or a Reddit stock or whatever. So it's AMC, and basically what AMC consists of is my muscle tissue is more fibrous than an average person's. So that limits range of motion in both my upper and lower extremities. As Dave mentioned, I've had it from birth. I have had numerous procedures throughout my life to get my body in the most usable state. I always joke with everyone. I saw my orthopedic surgeon growing up more than I saw my pediatrician. I literally thought my orthopedic surgeon was my pediatrician because I saw him so often. But yeah, I mean, I use a power wheelchair to get around when it's a longer distance. But I do typically walk shorter distances if I'm just going to like an office or like Target or the grocery store or whatever. You know, it's taught me a lot. It's definitely given me a unique perspective on life. And I think being in a disability, you see one of two things in people. You either see the really good side of people or the really bad side of people. Usually it's the really good side, but occasionally it's the really bad side. Some people just, I don't know, they just don't get it, or they're just, not very accepting or what have you. But generally speaking, I would say people are very open to it now. And I think the fact that, I grew up, I was in all mainstream classes, I was with my peers, and I think that really helped that I was included amongst them and I wasn't.
I'm like, that's a good point. Yeah. So you were included.
Yeah, I was included, and I was always able to do the any after school activities, or I played in a baseball league for 20 years. That is for people with disabilities, located in Buffalo Grove, Buddy Baseball. If you want to volunteer, feel free.
Nice.
A little shameless plug there.
Huh?
But I loved
shame.
it, you know, like, I mean, how I think about it all the time, you know, if I was born in a different place or a different time or to different people,
Yeah.
how different my life could have been, or how non-existent my life could have been even. You know, I mean, you think 100 years ago in America, I mean, people with disabilities were being institutionalized and in some cases sterilized. And it's like, wow, that's, you know, we've come a long way since then, but that is a pretty scary thought to think that that could have been my reality if I had been born, you know, just 100 years ago.
Yeah. Just 100 years ago, or maybe being born 10 years ago, but in a different country.
Right. Exactly.
So we don't know what's going on in a lot of different countries. Not to say that everything is always so great here. And that's not to say that we don't need to change things. And it's important to recognize what needs to shift here. At the same time, recognizing like, yeah, 10, 20 years ago, maybe if you were born in another country, you'd be treated the same way.
Right. I mean, what if I was, you know, a kid, you know, with the same disability, and let's say I grew up in like a war zone, you know, like what would that have been like? So yes, I'm incredibly grateful for the laws that we have, the protections we have, and for the opportunities that I have received because of that.
Yeah. And because of the opportunities you've received because of that, beyond having some things changed or make it so it's more accessible for you, like, how do you think of, where does entitlement come in? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, where does entitlement come in for people in general? Like, oh, I got screwed over because I'm name 10 things. It doesn't matter whether it's a color, a height, a gender, so many different things. Like, where does entitlement come in, and how do you feel about that? Maybe coming from the frame where you should be getting more things because of the situation that you are in, but like you said before, not being over. Right. So like, where's that balance? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Did that even make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
I get what you're saying.
I was trying.
No, there is a fine line, because obviously I have additional needs.
Yes.
In comparison to everybody else. So yeah, I do need more things and more help sometimes. But that being said, you know, it's like, I didn't expect to like get straight A's in school just because I have a disability.
Yeah.
You know, like, there is always like a limit of like, okay, like, you're taking advantage of it too much. But like, at the same time, you have to advocate for yourself too. You know, it's like, well, if I need to do an assignment this way in order to get a good grade, then that's how I have to do it.
Say that again.
Like, if I needed in school, if I needed to do an assignment a certain way in order for me to, you know, if it was like I had someone else type the paper while I dictate it, let's say.
Okay.
You know, things like that. Like, those are things that like I had to do in order to be successful.
Right. And you were okay with that?
Yeah. Yeah. At the time, I don't do that anymore, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It brings up a lot of lots coming up now, right? That we're talking about these things. I mean, it's really an opportunity for us all to self-reflect, and it's really an opportunity to be more empathetic, to do our best to put ourselves in other people's shoes. And mind all of us, we got to take off our own shoes first when we're putting ourselves, and it's so challenging to do that. But how do we, in so many different situations, really be empathetic, be understanding, listen to what people are saying in general, and as I said, to use the metaphor, take off our shoes before we put ourselves into somebody else's shoes, so we could really feel and understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And we can apply this in so many areas. Think about that coworker right now that you have in your life that maybe they're struggling and they're acting a certain way. you notice that maybe they're being defensive or things always have to be their way. Maybe there's something going on at their home. Maybe they're challenged. Think about it maybe with your spouse or with your kid. Like, are they acting differently? Maybe it's something with ourselves. Like, I noticed a couple weeks ago, like, I said a couple things to people, and they weren't terrible, but they were a little below the line, right? They weren't very cool, what I said. And I was like, man, like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
That wasn't Dave. That wasn't abundant Dave speaking. That was scarcity Dave speaking. Like, go say something. And recently I just apologized to somebody because I didn't know the definition and what Juneteenth was, which was a national holiday. If we don't know what that is, it's a national holiday that we just had earlier this week on June 19th. And somebody was saying to me, Brandon, B-Dog was saying to me on Friday, hey, man, are we going to have mastermind on Monday, which was June 16th? We have 19th. We have a mastermind group every 2 weeks. And he said, yeah, but some people might not be working because it's a national holiday. So they might not be in the area.
Right.
And I was just like, oh, yeah, I didn't even ask. And I'll send out an email. And then it was like later that day, I'm like, you kind of just blew that off, dude. Dave, you kind of just pushed it to a side. Like, it's Juneteenth. It's important. And on top of it, Brandon's black. Like, it's really important to him. And you kind of pushed it off to the side. So what did I do? On Monday, I said something to Brandon. I called him and I said, look, man, like, I want to apologize. Like, I didn't give the time of day, the thought, and I really didn't. I kind of pushed it off as no big deal. I said, so what happened was I got this email from the Daily Stoic. I get these daily emails from these guys. And I read what really happened on June 19th, 1865 in Texas when the Union went down there. And I'm like, oh, this is really important. So I apologized to him.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I really didn't give the time of day. And I didn't mean to brush it off. And I said, I apologize, man. And I thank you for being kind to me and actually bringing it up, because I wouldn't have known not only the history and how important it was, but how it could affect other people. And now moving forward, I will carry on this ripple effect of love and understanding and kindness. And of course, he was just awesome about it to me, because that's how B-Dog is. He's super cool to me, but it really made a difference. So I think that empathy and the understanding into listening where people are coming from is really so important, because we just don't know what's going on in people's lives. And at the same time, we don't want to assume that Kevin or somebody in a wheelchair is having an awful life and then start to hover and helicopter and overcompensate, because it's like, no, their lives are okay too. Like, we're all going through things, right? So it's a good point.
Yeah.
What do you like to do for fun?
What do I like to do for fun? I'm a diehard Cubs fan, so I definitely go to a lot of baseball games.
Yeah.
But just hanging out with friends, spending time with my adorable niece and 2 nephews. And traveling. Definitely doing a lot of traveling this year, it seems like. Yeah.
Where have you gone?
So let's see. Back in March, went to Denver for a work trip, and then I went to Montgomery, Alabama for a speech. May, I went to ISU just to relive the glory days.
How was that?
Oh, it was fun. It was a good time. I miss it. College was a good time.
Oh, that's funny.
And let's see, June, Ohio twice. Those are for 2 weddings. And let's see, Florida in July, and Michigan in August. So yeah, it's going to be a busy year.
You're all over the place.
Yeah, tell me about it.
You have to get a different seat on the plane?
So planes are always interesting.
How's that work?
So you probably noticed that, like, on a bus or a train, there is a spot for a wheelchair. On a plane, there is not. So what that means is that if you bring a wheelchair on a plane, it's going to get thrown into the cargo hold. So for that reason, I don't bring my power wheelchair on planes anymore. I did it once in 8th grade. My chair was almost destroyed. I'm never doing it again. So
They
vacation.
they couldn't put it somewhere in the cargo and strap it.
They're working on it. Yeah, they're working on it. Hopefully there'll be
It's a couple straps.
Right.
How hard?
Hopefully there'll be
What year is this?
Oh, this is 2005. Yeah.
It wasn't 1800, was it?
No.
I mean,
There'll be hopefully.
there were no planes then, but
right. Hopefully there'll be a spot like in the cabin at some point. But basically, I ended up booking the ticket, and then I always have to call them and be like, "Hey, I have a limited range of motion in my legs. Can you move me to a different seat?" And then they move me to a different seat with more leg room.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, no upcharge though. That's the key. Got to work the system.
Yeah. I would hope not.
Yeah.
But are you sitting in just a standard coach chair then? Yeah, you are.
I'm usually in the first row of coach. Is how it goes.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you know what? You should be.
Yeah.
Like the bulkhead?
Yeah.
There's a little extra room?
Yep.
Yeah, you should be.
Yep. That's where they usually put me.
Now, they put you there, or do you get that, or can you get that a seat signed when you're actually booking the flight?
If I want to pay for it, I can.
Yeah, but no.
But no, I take the cheapest seat and then I call them and then get it for free. That's the way to do it.
And that's the right way to do it.
Yeah.
You should be getting that spot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I agree.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's all about gaming the system.
It's all about gaming the system. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Laura says here, doesn't it always come to having a level of consideration with one another? Yeah, it does, Laura. Thanks for sharing that. LinkedIn user says, thanks for the accountability partner, brother B. Oh, that must be branding. It doesn't say your name on there. So sometimes LinkedIn doesn't show people's names on there. Yeah. I love the comments and I love the shares with everybody. So what do you, we're in this an hour, which is super cool. If we were sitting here 1 year from now,
okay,
what would we be celebrating?
Wow. 1 year from now,
yeah.
What would we be celebrating?
For you, what would we be celebrating?
Hopefully getting some consistent speaking gigs. And maybe getting some conferences, really getting the name out there. Hoping maybe to start a YouTube channel or something like this at some point.
I like that.
Yeah.
So more speaking gigs.
Yeah. And
a YouTube channel. Now, does that mean I'm going to be holding you accountable on this stuff?
I guess you have to. Somebody's got to.
Somebody's got to. I love it. I did profess this year that I want 2 speaking gigs a month.
Yeah.
My first almost 5 months, I only had 6 gigs.
Okay. So
I only had 1 gig a month on average. This month I've already had 2, and next month I have 2.
Cool.
So I'm making that shift to getting 2 gigs a month, actually in a speaking group with a few other people.
Mm-hmm.
We did Break the Mold earlier this year in February. So that was a big event that we did here in Rolling Meadows, which was super cool. And surrounding yourself with speakers, right? The right people.
Yeah.
And throwing it out there to the universe, and then applying and getting these gigs, because I think you have a lot to say.
Yeah.
And it's important stuff, right? Like things that we don't realize that I think is really important to understand and to share. So I love the story. I love the frame that you're coming from. And I like the fact that we could just sit here and be real.
Yeah.
Right?
Looks like we got a question on the comments. Let's see. Do you appreciate it more when people ask questions instead of assuming some things? Yes. Yes, I do. People assume a lot. I can't tell you how many people have assumed over the years that, like, I can't walk, for instance. I think if you're not sure, it's always better to just ask.
It's always better to just ask. Yeah, that's a good question. And I do that with people's names sometimes.
Yeah.
As opposed to assuming, just ask. I meet a lot of people, and sometimes I forget their names. And then now I'm up in my head.
Yep.
Now I'm putting out this like weird vibe, and they're like, "Hey, Dave," and I'm like, "Hey,
you."
And it's like so awful to do that. Like, how cheesy is that? And it's like, you know what?
Yeah.
Hey, man, I forgot your name.
It's okay.
Could you share your name again? It's like, how hard is that just to ask somebody's name?
I have that problem all the time because, like, I don't want to sound conceited saying this, but like everyone recognizes me, but that does not mean I recognize them.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That's a good note to go on. I'm giggling now. Like because I forgot somebody's name yesterday too. And then somebody else said it and I'm like, oh yeah, cool. They said their name. So
yeah, that's what you're always hoping for.
Yeah. Well, I am going to leave. I'm going to leave us with something that we always share at the end of the show. Always, the last, let's say, 6 months. And that is something that Gabby Vargas is the founder of the National Hispanic Suicide Prevention Network, which I am an ambassador for. I learned a lot about suicide, being in this group and learning to empathize and recognize people's signs. And she said something I found was very thoughtful and really has made a lot of difference in people's lives. So the idea is, text somebody today, I'm thinking about you. And that's it. I'm thinking about you. Hey, you crossed my mind today. Hope everything's okay. Thinking about you. Just text somebody today, I'm thinking about you. And I guarantee that small text will make a world of difference.
I agree.
Anything you want to say to close out?
I mean, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This was great. Maybe we'll do it again sometime.
I love it.
Yeah.
And let's get some speaking gigs together.
Yeah.
Because I want to get some more gigs too.
Yeah.
And there's more and more opportunities to speak. And I think not only do you have a lot to say, but there's a lot to share, and there's a lot that is still needed to be done in so many areas. And why not, right? Like 2020, the reset button got hit.
Yep.
If we're not going to do this stuff now, when are we going to do it? Think about it. So many of these things have been bubbling up underground, and it just all came to the surface, right? Which is really the gift. Like, let's use 2020 as a shift, as a gift to share and to be more empathetic and understanding and shift things within inside and encourage others to live beyond default, as we like to say on this show here. So I'm going to close it out with some music. And yeah, we appreciate everybody being here. Throw on a little bit of tunage. All right, Kev.
It's been fun.
It's been fun too. Yeah. So I will say until next time, make it a great week. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next time. Share the show, share the love, be the person you want to be, and always leave the vibe better than you found it. Peace and enjoy your 4th of July.
So long.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
That was awesome. Kind of fun, huh?
Yeah.
Super chill. Love the guests. Love people sharing on the show.